There are very few things in trucking that will end a career overnight. A bad freight market won't, skyrocketing fuel prices won't, and even an unexpected major repair usually won't. But one single drug and alcohol violation absolutely can. And the scary thing is that most of the time when this happens, the person doesn't even know that they're breaking the rules. They're either confused, they're misinformed, or nobody's actually sat them down and explained how the system works. That's why in today's episode, we're going to talk about the FMCSA's drug and alcohol regulations, everything from the clearinghouse, violations, consortiums, and especially those mistakes to avoid so you don't lose your livelihood. I'm Chris. This is my 7th year owning a trucking company and hosting the Haulin Assets podcast. When I first started, I thought I knew trucking. Turns out I had no idea how much I would learn. Welcome back to Haulin Assets 2.0, where I take you through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs of being an owner-operator.
Indeed. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 198 of the Haulin Assets podcast. All things drugs and alcohol, Chris. Let's party, huh? It's time to party.
I should have brought my party hat.
If people aren't watching on YouTube, then for all they know, you're wearing it. All right. I am your host, Craig. Over there, he's Chris. Chris, how's it going today?
Good. It kind of looks like you're wearing your party shirt or a summer shirt at least.
It is high summer here in Utah, which means holy crap. Bring out the really thin polyester because I need something cool. Anyway, all right, Chris, before we go on, I will, of course, remind everybody to hit up HaulinAssetsLLC.com for full show notes on all these episodes. Go to motorcarrierhq.com for the tools, tips, and people you need to make the jump from employee driver to owner-operator. And finally, HaulinAssetsAcademy.com is where you go for the self-directed learning for many of the things that we talk about on this podcast and that you need to know whether we talk about it or not. So it's dirt cheap prices and it's really good stuff over there at HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. Chris, question for you.
What is it?
What is the least favorite sentence of any trucker, or really any employee anywhere, but in this case, for truckers?
Congratulations, you've been selected for a random drug test.
Yeah, there we go. And you were driving on the road. Did you get random drug tested?
Oh, you know what? I've been random drug tested. I'm trying to think if it happened the year that I was on the road. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. Now, with that being said, I get tested by both the FMCSA and the military. So I have plenty of drug tests every year.
Which, really cramps your style, I'm sure.
Cramps my style.
It's, you're also known as Chris the Rave Man, right? So I know how you like to party.
Yeah.
But not so much in the last.
I've been referred more to a stick in the mud than I have a big partier. So I'm not the one wearing the cool shirt.
Well, I beg to differ. Again, people on YouTube can find Chris's shirt.
My shirt is cool as in I'm cool. Your shirt is cool as in temperature cool.
Yeah, there you go. All right. All right, Chris, there's going to be plenty of jokes to be had today, but we should say, look, this is a really serious topic. It is, as you said in the intro, something that can derail not just your day or your week or your year. It can derail your entire career in the trucking industry. And so you do not want to run afoul of drug and alcohol issues. And Chris, I know this is something that Haulin Assets has dealt with in the past. And maybe we can get into that, or maybe we leave it. But one thing I will say is that this episode, we do want to cover a lot of the stuff around this topic, around these issues. We are not going to cover everything. So before we say anything else, Chris, where would you recommend, if somebody wants to know, kind of, you can read the manual, so to speak, where do they go? Do they go to the FMCSA website and find the section on drugs and alcohol? Where can you get a thorough, total understanding of this? That's
a great question. Absolutely, the FMCSA's website's a good place to go. Motor Carrier HQ and our folks are good knowledge sources. But if you want to hear straight from the horse's mouth, the FMCSA's website, you can go right into the regulations. They're pretty easy to find on their website. But they've also got some cheat sheets that kind of hit the highlights of the regulations. So, pretty easy on their site to find those items.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, anything else you want to say in introductory fashion talking about this topic?
Just that it's important. So whether you are a driver, a leased on owner operator, run an independent, or even if you're thinking about becoming a driver, the FMCSA's drug and alcohol regulations are going to follow you wherever you go under any of those situations. You need to understand them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's dig into that. And if you don't mind me kind of extemporaneously mentioning something, it would be that, Chris, you'd have a hard time finding someone who is more kind of naturally libertarian minded than me. Get out of my business. I don't want to, deregulate and privatize all that stuff. Okay, great. That's kind of my priors. That said, it's not an absolute thing. And this is one of those areas where I'm like, look, if you're going to drive a missile 70 miles an hour down the street, then I can see why we have these regulations and why it's a serious issue, both for the sake of your career and for the other people out on the road, right?
I agree 100%. I'm usually fewer government regulations kind of person, but this is absolutely one of those areas where you need and you should have them. And kind of like you alluded to, the reason is because the consequences are so significant. You do not want somebody, and it happens, even with the regulations, think of how much more would happen without them. You do get people driving when they shouldn't, either because they're high or because they're drunk. And that's just a terrible thing. And another thing I kind of, want to talk a little bit about this is a lot of the times owner operators tend to have not the best attitude when it comes to this, because they think, I'm the owner, I can be responsible, I own the truck, you don't need to check up on me. But that's just not the way the system works, because believe it or not, there are irresponsible owner operators out there.
It's one of those things where it's like, the few bad apples ruin it for the bunch. And it's like, look, you, dear listener, you take your career seriously. I know this because you're listening to this freaking show right now. So it's likely that to a certain extent we're preaching to the choir here. But there are people out there who disregard the rules, and therefore we all have to abide by them. So,
and you need to understand this stuff, at least the basics of it. And another thing, a lot of the times that people think, well, the FMCSA never really checks on this kind of stuff, but they absolutely do. It happens, and you don't want to get caught with your pants down. So,
I guess that's a question. I have a question that can wait until we get into some of the more specifics. But let's get into the broad strokes of when these policies kick in, who this affects, what type of trucks. This is not something that's going to affect your, private vehicles running down the road. People are unfortunately driving drunk and high all the time. But is this anybody who has a CDL? What's kind of the cutoff? How does this work?
Anybody that's operating a commercial motor vehicle over 26,000 pounds absolutely has to follow the drug and alcohol regulations.
Okay. So let's see. Do you know how long has this been the case? This has got to be around for 50, 60 years.
Long as I can remember.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So CDL drivers, if you hold a CDL, you are being entrusted with larger and more dangerous vehicles. So that's why this is the case. So now there are different types of testing, right? It's not all one blanket, hey, come pee in a cup, and we're going to test for everything under the sun. There are different types of tests that they do, or is it all just, hey, pee in this cup and we're going to test for everything?
The test, there's two tests. There's a drug test and there's an alcohol test. And the rates at which the tests occur and the reasoning, like the things that trigger a test to happen, are different in each situation. So there's basically 6 different times when a drug or alcohol test can be triggered. And the first one is a pre-employment. Anytime you switch employers, you switch to a new company, they have to conduct a pre-employment drug test. Even if, let's say, you just had one yesterday because you thought you were going to work for this company and things changed and you're going to do another company, you have to do a drug and alcohol pre-employment test under that new company.
And this is for owner operators as well, because as we've discussed before, once you start your own business, you are an employee of that business. You have to have your, what is it? You have to have your employment application on file for your own company, right? That sort of thing. So you think, oh, well, I'm the owner, I'm not an employee, so this doesn't apply to me. That is not the way the FMCSA sees it, right? And then once you are employed, that's when the quote unquote random version kicks in, right? You get random testing for all trucking employees, right? After the pre-employment check, now you enter the random pool?
Yeah, so as soon as you have that pre-employment test, you kind of assume, most systems assume that you've been hired by that company, and you automatically should be put into their random drug testing pool. So on day one, every time they pull a random set of drug tests, you could potentially be picked.
Right. Okay. So now you're an employee, you could be picked anytime, but there are triggering events that will, for lack of a better word, trigger a drug or alcohol test. And the one that comes to mind most obviously right off the top of my head is an accident with fatalities. If that happens, you're almost certainly, I would assume it's required that you'd be tested at that point. What about accidents with injuries and not fatalities? How do these work?
So anytime you have an accident, and this is, there's 3 triggers, and I like to use hearse, nurse, or tow. That kind of helps me remember it. Hearse, nurse, or tow.
Hearse, nurse, or tow.
So hearse, if somebody dies, you have to do a post-accident drug test.
Yeah.
Nurse, if somebody gets injured but doesn't die, but they're injured, then you have to do a post-accident drug test. Or if one of the vehicles, either vehicle or any vehicle involved in the accident gets towed, then you have to do a post-accident drug test.
Interesting.
So if it doesn't meet one of those criteria, you don't have to get a post-accident drug test. If it meets any one of them or multiple of them, you do.
Okay. And then there are other possible triggers as well, and just observational ones, potentially. Your employer or supervisor notices changes in your behavior, or some inspector notices something, and they can just run it up the flagpole, right, and say, hey, this person needs to be tested. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. So in order for a supervisor to be able to do that, they have to have gone through what's called supervisor training. And it's really not a very complicated training. It takes, depending on how you take it and where you take it, a few hours to half a day typically. You have to show some competency, take an exam with it. But once they've completed that training, if they have any kind of suspicion that you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they can order you to immediately go and be tested. And then at that point, you have to get a test.
Right. And it's one of those like, hey, you've been given notice, you've got 24 hours to go pee in a cup at an approved location, right?
Well, it kind of depends. If it's drug, yeah, usually within 24 hours is fine. But if it's alcohol, like you need to go, if they suspect alcohol, you got to go do it now.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And then there's something that I wanted some clarification on, and that's return to duty. What's that trigger event? What does that mean? So
the next 2 are situations where you've tested positive for a drug or alcohol test. You have to go through a whole program called a SAP program that takes you through some training and then random drug tests to show that you're clean. And then once you get through that program, you can go and drive again. So the return to duty tests are all those kind of whatever tests you have to take as part of that SAP program. Then once you've completed the program, you take one final. It's basically the same thing as a pre-employment test, that return to duty test. And then at that point, you're good. And a lot of the times, as part of that, you can also be subject, because you've already tested positive once, you can be subject to even more tests called follow-up tests, similar to the random drug tests.
And so those are our 6 common triggers, including the follow-up tests. Okay, so this is a little bit like pass and fail truck issues, right? When you're getting your equipment inspected, if something fails, then you're probably more likely to get flagged in the future. You're going to get more inspections if you fail. Your body is your truck. Okay. This is our religion, Chris. It's no longer a temple. Your body is your truck. And it's a similar type of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You get you test positive one time.
And that's just the beginning.
That's just the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So what I hear you saying then is, tell me if I'm summing this up correctly. There are times when a single violation would almost certainly spell the end of your trucking career. If you are in an accident with a fatality, you're at fault, and there's drugs or alcohol in your system, I'm going to assume you're done. Exceptions?
I would never say never in this kind of a situation, but the ability to get back in is probably the hoops you would have to jump through are probably not going to be worth it for most people.
Okay. And then otherwise, if you test positive for some random test, it may not end your career, but boy, is it going to give you a rough go of it for the next months and years ahead.
Yeah, you're probably not going to be driving a truck super soon. Can you get back into a truck? Absolutely. But there's a process and it takes time. Like I would plan on a year.
Okay. All right. So try your best. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't run afoul.
Moral of the story is just don't do drugs. If you want to drive a commercial motor vehicle, do not do drugs.
It's just go back to your DARE training from elementary school.
And one thing I want to kind of emphasize now too, we might talk a little bit more about it later on as well, but I want to make sure we don't miss it. And that is a refusal to take a drug test. If you are ordered for any one of those 6 reasons that we talked about, that you have to take a drug test because of one of those triggers, and you say, no, I'm not going to do it, they count that just the same
as a positive
drug test. So don't do that. Especially if you have no reason to say no, I'm not going to do it. Like,
don't let your libertarian self like me get in the way of your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I get it.
The government doesn't need to know. I haven't done anything, but the government doesn't need to know. Well, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay, Chris, I want to move on and talk about the word clearinghouse. This is a word I see thrown around in a lot of different contexts, but it means something specific when it comes to the drug and alcohol tests. What the heck is a clearinghouse in this case?
So this is actually still a relatively new thing. It's one of those things that I think has added simplicity to the entire system. It was a good move. And it's basically a database that records all the commercial motor vehicle drivers' positive drug tests. So if they've had a positive test, they have had a referral or a refusal, that gets recorded in that system. And employers, when we hire a new driver, we have to check that system and make sure they're not in that. And the system will come back and it'll tell us if they're eligible to drive or if they're not eligible to drive. If you've tested positive and it deems you ineligible, you can't be deemed eligible in that system until you've gone through that SAP, substance abuse program, protocol. Once you've done that, then they can make you eligible again. But that's really the beauty of the system. We used to have to ask their previous employers for 3 years if they've had any violations, all that kind of stuff. It was a pain in the butt. The clearinghouse takes care of all of that. The other important thing with the clearinghouse is you have to do an annual query as well. So every year, every one of our drivers, I have to go in and submit a request asking if, seeing if they've had any violations in the last year, even if they've worked for us that whole entire time. And as far as I know, they've passed all their drug tests, that maybe they went and tried to get hired on somewhere else and failed the pre-employment drug test that I didn't know about. All that stuff would get captured in that clearinghouse.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned that there are positive tests, there are refusals, and I know that there's something also called an actual knowledge violation. What the heck is that?
That can happen if, let's take, for example, this is a pretty clear cut and dry example. You're driving down the road in your truck and you're blatantly smoking marijuana. You're like, hey, I'm in Oregon. It's legal here. Well, not
for you. It's
not for you. It's not for a CDL driver. That would be something of a blatant knowledge of a violation.
So wait, whose knowledge? Like, how are you getting caught?
Well, if somebody sees it and they report you, then I've never seen that happen.
Okay.
So it's not like it's a
more
common thing.
theoretical.
It's more of a, theoretical is a good way to put it, but it absolutely could.
Okay. All right. So anything else we need to know about the clearinghouse? Basically just know that you're going to be in it if you run afoul.
There's one thing I want to touch more just really briefly. There's two types of queries. There is a full query or a limited query. Typically the limited queries are what's run every year by your employer. Like when we hire a new driver, they sign a consent form allowing us to conduct the general limited query. And so we don't have to go get new consent every time, we do that annual query. The only information we get back is whether that driver's qualified or not qualified. That's it. The full query requires the driver's electronic consent. You usually do those when you do a new hire, and or if the limited query comes back and says not qualified, then you'll typically go get their consent, get a full query, and it'll provide more detail.
All right. Next question is what counts? Alcohol is pretty obvious. Alcohol is alcohol. Drugs, though, get a little bit fuzzy around the edges. What qualifies and what doesn't? I think a really good example would be the explosion in the last decade of CBD products, right? These are marijuana-based products that purportedly don't contain the THC that gives people the high that marijuana is known for. So what if somebody's, doing CBD products and it says it's THC free? Any knowledge on that or any experience with it?
I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, but the thing is if they test, marijuana is one of those items that gets tested, and if they find that in your system, if you have a medical marijuana card and it's prescribed, there is some latitude with that, similar to other medications that you can take. But the thing is, this is where people get themselves into big trouble. I think it's best just to stay away from any of those kind of products as much as you possibly can, because what happens is they may advertise it as THC free, but I don't know if it's that sometimes in the process when they're making the product, that all that doesn't get removed, or they make a mistake or something happens, or they're just blatantly lying and saying it's THC free.
Right.
And you take it, you consume it, you ingest it, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're testing positive for drug and alcohol. Again, this is your career, this is your livelihood. Like, I would just stay away from anything that looks like it could possibly cause you any kind of problem.
So no bowls full of birdseed, people. All right. What is it? Yeah, it's like poppy, right?
Yeah.
That gets in your system.
Yeah.
Okay, that's unlikely. But okay, so we've got recreational marijuana. We've got the medical use cards. Okay, those are a little fuzzier. And then prescription medications, I assume there's some regulation around that as well. If I were to guess, it would be that if you're prescribed a medication, good, take your medication within the prescribed dose, right?
Absolutely. And when you get a drug test, the way that the drug tests work is you get a drug test, you pee in a cup, that sample goes to a lab, the lab analyzes it, and it tests for those items in it. And it doesn't just test yes or no, it has it. It can actually provide a level of how much of that specific substance is in your urine. And then it goes to essentially a medical professional that reviews those results, and they're the ones that deem it whether that sample is positive or negative. Now, if one of those items comes back positive, but it's for some kind of prescription drug, they will call the person that had the test taken and say, hey, you tested positive for this. Do you have a prescription for it? And if you say yes, they're going to ask you for the prescription. They're going to review the prescription, and they can tell if that level that they tested, that the lab tested in your urine, is in line with what you've been prescribed. So if it's within line, you're going to be fine. They're going to give a negative result, and your employer is not even going to know that you're on that prescription. But if it comes back over that prescribed amount, they're gonna label it as a positive test.
Okay. All right. So I guess as long as we're doing moral of the story after these sections, the moral of the story here would be keep it not only legal, but keep it compliant. Because like you said, it doesn't really matter what state you live in and what the federal laws are versus the local laws and blah, blah, blah. No, you are an over-the-road truck driver. You are subject to certain regulations. Stay within those regulations. Okay, good. Now, Chris, we touched on this a little bit, and that's owner-operators who do have to participate in this.
Before we get to owner-operators, I
okay.
want to talk one more thing a little bit with recreational marijuana, because there's some confusion with this, right? Because you've got state regulations, state laws, state rules, and federal regulations and federal laws. There's a lot of states now, I don't know how many, but a lot of states now allow full-blown recreational use of marijuana. They don't, you can use it, you can carry a certain amount of it, no big deal. But that's a state law and it's okay in that state, but it is not a FMCSA law. The FMCSA and the federal government still deems marijuana illegal. And so you cannot, as a commercial motor vehicle operator, use marijuana recreationally. You just cannot do it. If you get tested and you've used it, it's going to be a positive result, just like it would be with cocaine or any other kind of illegal drug. So keep that in mind. And this is me giving my prediction, like even if the federal government at some point allows recreational use of marijuana, I don't think that's going to change for commercial motor vehicle operators. It's too dangerous. For
the reasons we discussed. Yep. So yeah, you know, Chris, I kind of want to rename this episode. New name? Chris harshes everyone's mellow.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, sorry about that. All right, can we get to owner-operators? Because I mentioned this earlier. Hey, this is my truck. This is my business. I do what I want.
I don't have employees, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that is not the case here. So as an owner-operator, somebody's considering making that jump. What can they expect once they are an owner-operator? They've got their own business entity. They're still going to have to drug test, right?
If you are an owner-operator, you're the only one in the program, you still have to have a drug and alcohol program, system, process. You have to follow, for the most part, almost essentially the exact same regulations as a fleet with 1,000 trucks in it. So you have to do, like as an owner-operator, when you start your business, you've got to do a pre-employment drug test. You've got to put yourself in a random drug testing pool, not one that you can administer. I can't remember the cutoff. I want to say it's 3. Like any trucking company that has 3 or fewer drivers is required to be in a third-party administrative consortium or random drug testing pool. You cannot administer it on your own. And in fact, it's pretty rare that anybody with under 20 trucks manages their own drug testing consortium. They usually have a third party, like Motor Carrier HQ. We've got ours. We've got one that you can join, really easy, pretty inexpensive, not hard to do. So as an owner operator, you absolutely have to be in that third party administered consortium.
You know what I just heard, Chris?
What's that?
Another advertisement, motorcarrierhq.com.
Give us a call.
No, it's, I kid, but no, it's a really valuable place. And I know I mention it every episode, but take it seriously. If you're thinking about the leap, motorcarrierhq.com. All right, so now there are also requirements for these owner-operators around record keeping. And you have to, register with the Clearinghouse? What do you have to do
so
besides joining the consortium?
Every trucking company has to register with the Clearinghouse. All their, you want to input your drivers into it so you can do those annual queries. Again, as an owner operator, even if it's you being HR, you're the truck driver, you're the accountant, you're everything, you're also making sure you're randomly drug tested.
So when we say that the owner operator wears a lot of hats, one of the hats says narc right across the front of it.
There you go. Yeah, they're narking on themselves. Absolutely.
Love that. Okay, good. So we talked a little bit about how to get yourself set up and what the tests look like. And we've already mentioned what happens after a violation to an extent. Anything else you want to add kind of on that after the test, after a positive result, or do you think we've covered that ground?
It could almost be its whole episode. So I think just know that if you test positive, or you've got a driver or somebody that tests positive, they can no longer operate a commercial motor vehicle, or how the FMCSA actually terms it, they can't do any safety sensitive function. So if the person's a mechanic, they can no longer work on the trucks until that they've gone through the substance abuse program, the SAP program.
Even mechanics?
Even mechanics.
Wow. Okay.
Anything to do with the safety sensitive function on a truck, you cannot do if you've tested positive.
Okay. Well, like you said, Chris, there's any number of different things we could dive into and rabbits we could chase on this topic. But do you feel like we've covered this as far as what we wanted to do?
I think so.
Okay. So I'll just remind everybody, the FMCSA's website, go check it out. And look, it's not a bad idea. If you're going to be making the jump and becoming an owner operator, or if you already are one, invest a little bit of time to understand these regulations, because you mentioned it at the top of the show, Chris. It's not always somebody who's flagrantly violating the rules. And they go, well, you can't tell me what to do. And then they light up their blunt. This is, I assume, much or most of the time, it's people who didn't realize what the requirements were, and then they ran afoul of them, and they go, well, I didn't know. And you know what the law says? Don't care.
Yep.
Right?
Perfect. Great way to put it.
Okay, Chris, that's good. Let's leave it there then. All right, now, before we wrap up the episode, I've already done my 3 commercials now for motorcarrierhq.com, so that's done. But you've got some more info on the 200th episode giveaway, am I right?
We only have one more episode until the 200th episode. So I'm not going to give all the details. In fact, I'm not really giving any details in this episode. But next episode, we're going to talk about the giveaway. We're super humbled to be at this point, 200 episodes and 7 years later, thousands of listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. It's one fun little way that we can show a little bit of our gratitude, and thank you for listening. And we'll, like I said, we'll share more details in the next episode.
And we will share more details there. I assume those details will also be shared on social media. So if you haven't yet, give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram. We're not on, sorry, it hurts me to say this, X, as far as I know. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, make sure you're there. We'll have some more announcements there. Chris, next episode, I demand, I'm not asking, I'm telling, you have to wear a button-down shirt, because if you don't give us all the details, I'm just going to make you unbutton one or two, because you're such a tease. All right?
Well, I'm not sure people would like that, but I could probably accommodate. I've probably never worn a full button-down shirt on the show. I've got a couple good summer ones.
Yeah. Well, anyway, enough about Chris's chest hair. Thanks everybody for listening and watching on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're at. It really helps the show. Tell your friends, rate and review, all the normal things that make us good little content creators, Chris. Thanks everybody, and thanks for Chris for coming in, and I will see you next time.
See you then.